World War II, a conflict so vast, so destructive, it seemed like every target was insane. But even in that madness, some stood out. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the history books, uncovering the most absolutely insane target of World War II. Fasten your helmet, history buffs. We're about to detonate some historical bombshells. Planning the mission. One evening over drinks in Cairo, two British Special Operations Executive (SOE) agents devised their boldest plan yet. Amidst the Axis occupation of Crete, they plotted to kidnap the feared Friedrich Wilhelm Müller. For 18-year-old Captain Stanley Moss, this mission was his first chance to prove himself within the top-secret SOE. For Major Patrick Lee Firmer, who had witnessed Müller's brutalities during the invasion, the operation was deeply personal. As preparations for the mission began on Crete, one of the Mediterranean's most dangerous islands, Müller was unexpectedly transferred. Faced with immense risks, the SOE had two options: cancel the mission or proceed. The decision of the two elite spies was clear. They would face danger and parachute into Crete to capture their target. Preparations and setbacks. When the Germans invaded Crete in spring 1941, they encountered fierce resistance from the locals, a first in the war. Enraged Cretan civilians, armed with knives, axes, and scythes, and sometimes fighting with bare hands, inflicted significant casualties on the invaders. This resistance, heavily supported by the British SOE, a secret branch of UK intelligence specializing in espionage, sabotage, and resistance support, remained active throughout the war. In late summer 1943, two young SOE officers, Captain William Stanley Moss and Major Patrick Lee Firmer, met for drinks and devised a daring mission: to kidnap General Friedrich Wilhelm Müller, the brutal commander of Germany's 22nd Air Landing Infantry Division and governor of Crete, known as the Butcher of Crete. Despite the mission's dangerous nature, it was quickly approved. After training at an SOE camp, Lee Firmer, Moss, and two Cretan resistance members, Georgios Teriakis and Emmanuel Paterakis, set off for Crete. They took off from Egypt, planning to parachute into enemy territory, but lousy weather complicated their plans. Lee Firmer successfully parachuted, but noticed the aircraft had to leave due to the weather. Upon landing, resistance fighters hid Lee Firmer, who met up with fellow SOE member Sandy Wren. For 2 months, the major hid while his task force attempted to land 8 more times. Finally, on April 4th, a motor launch brought the men close enough to row ashore in a dinghy. They marched across Crete's mountains to the village of Kadtemonitsa, meeting Mickey Akalmianos, the SOE operations leader on the island. Akalmianos, whose father had died fighting the Germans, informed them that Major General Heinrich Kriepe, a decorated Eastern Front veteran, had replaced Müller. Despite the setback, Lee Firmer proceeded with the mission, targeting Kriepe instead. Moss hid in the mountains with the resistance. At the same time, Lee Firmer disguised as a peasant and Akalmianos traveled to Heraklion and walked to Kriepe's villa. Kriepe, who loved ancient Greece, lived in Knossos, near the legendary labyrinth of the Minotaur. The rebels stayed in Akalmianos' family house across from Kriepe's villa to observe his routine. Kriepe's regular schedule made him vulnerable, with his chauffeur driving him to and from headquarters twice daily. One day, the SOE agents spotted Kriepe in his car. To their surprise, Kriepe waved at them in a friendly manner, not suspecting their true identity. After waving back, the duo devised the perfect plan: to stop Kriepe's car at night and capture him. They counted on the villa's staff, assuming Kriepe was out playing bridge, giving the SO team a few hours head start. They chose a T-junction on Kriepe's route to and from his headquarters, where cars had to slow down, making it an ideal ambush spot. Upon returning to their mountain retreat, they informed Moss and the resistance of their plan. On the night of April 26, 1944, after 4 failed attempts, the SOE agents and their Greek comrades prepared to intercept General Heinrich Kriepe's car. At 9:30 p.m., the lookout spotted Kriepe's car nearing the T-junction and alerted Lee Firmer and Moss to get into position. Wearing German uniforms provided by Akalmianos, Lee Firmer and Moss flagged down Kriepe's car. After asking the general for his documents and password, an impatient Kriepe got out of the vehicle and questioned their units. With audacious calm, Lee Firmer informed Kriepe that he was now a prisoner of war in British hands. The news was a shocking jolt to Kriepe, who had ironically received a promotion the day before. The group then knocked out the driver and bound Kriepe, adjusting the plan. They began the next stage of the operation by impersonating German officers. Lee Firmer now posing as the general with his cap on, Moss as the driver, and Akaumianos crammed into the front seat, while two Greek comrades squeezed in with the captured German in the back, knife at his throat. They maneuvered the car through Heraklion, breezing past 22 checkpoints, thanks to Krepa's notorious rudeness. The Germans on duty didn't suspect a thing. Once far enough away, the party split. Moss led the main group, marching Krepa to their hideout in the Ida Mountains. At the same time, Lee Firmer's team drove and abandoned the car to the coast to mislead the Germans into thinking the kidnappers had already escaped by sea. To spare the Cretan people from retaliation, Lee Firmer left a note with the car, explicitly stating a British raiding force had captured General Krepa. By the time you read this, he will be on his way to Cairo. Moss and the two Greek agents embarked on an arduous trek across the Cretan mountains, helped by resistance fighters. Despite their dislike of Krepa, the Germans were not fooled, and soon more than 30,000 troops were scouring the island while search aircraft flew overhead. The first evacuation attempt nearly turned catastrophic when German soldiers cluelessly stumbled upon their escape route on the beach. The group hurriedly marched back into the mountains to hide while Lee Firmer sought an SOE radio operator for new instructions. The Germans were hot on their trail, just an hour behind. When a new beach site was secured through SOE radio, the final march toward the point turned into a celebratory procession, with hundreds of peasants and resistance fighters cheering along the mountain path. Krepa, who had remained silent for most of his captivity, swayed atop a mule. After 17 nerve-wracking days on the run, at 11 p.m. on May 14th, the escape launch appeared alongside a commando unit ready to help. No enemies came, and the group slipped off Crete undetected, setting a course for Egypt. Aftermath and recognition. Upon their arrival in Egypt, the strain of the lengthy and arduous mission finally reached Lee Firmer and he collapsed. Lee Firmer and Moss were awarded the Distinguished Service Order and the Military Cross respectively. Both men later wrote about their incredible experiences. According to a resistance leader on Crete, following the kidnapping of Krepa, everybody felt taller. Meanwhile, Krepa kidnapping dealt a blow to Axis morale on the island. Allied propaganda suggested the operation was a cover story and that the German general had defected, possibly out of fear during an Allied invasion. The Nazis did not immediately retaliate, possibly due to Krepa's popularity. According to wartime lore, some even toasted with champagne when they found out the Allies had taken him. However, in 1944, retaliation did come in the form of Friedrich Wilhelm Müller, the Butcher of Crete, who was reinstated as a commander and promptly dished out reprisals against the local population. Lieutenant General Krepa spent 3 years in captivity in Canada and was released after the war ended. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you like this video, click on the next one shown on the screen. I'm sure you'll like it. Thanks for watching.